Nobody expected Shedeur Sanders' NFL story to begin like this. One moment, he was standing quietly on the sideline holding a clipboard, and the next he was being thrown into one of the most hostile environments in football, facing a defense that has ended careers and embarrassed veterans. But what happened on that field wasn't just a rookie struggling under pressure. It was something far more revealing. Because the real story isn't Shedeur's performance. It's what the Cleveland Browns did or didn't do long before he ever stepped onto that turf. For months, fans were told the organization had a plan, that they were developing him behind the scenes, shaping him for the moment he'd eventually get his opportunity. But when that moment arrived, what unfolded exposed a truth so brutal that even the most loyal Browns fans couldn't ignore it anymore. The franchise that claimed to be building for the future had actually left its rookie quarterback completely unprepared, isolated, and abandoned. The meltdown wasn't shocking because of how Shedeur played. It was shocking because of how predictable it was. Inside the locker room, behind closed doors, there were warning signs. Strange decisions, missed opportunities. A coaching staff more focused on appearances than preparation. And when Dillon Gabriel went down and the Browns were suddenly forced to rely on the rookie they'd been developing, the entire facade crumbled in real time. The media didn't just react, they erupted. Analysts, former players, and frustrated fans all asking the same question. How does an NFL team let this happen? And yet, as loud as the critics were, there was one voice that cut through the noise with a level of fury and clarity the city hadn't heard in years. A voice that laid out exactly how Shedeur was set up to fail from the moment he arrived. A voice that didn't just blame the rookie, but held the entire organization accountable. Because this wasn't a bad game. This was a blueprint for disaster written months ago. And when you see what went on behind the scenes, it becomes impossible to blame Shedeur Sanders at all. But to understand how the Browns let the situation explode into a franchise-wide embarrassment, we have to go back to where it all began, months before that Ravens game, long before Shedeur ever took a single snap. And that's where the real story starts. The moment Dillon Gabriel's helmet hit the turf, everything changed. The stadium didn't get quiet, it got louder. Baltimore smelled blood, the kind of moment they live for, the kind of chaos their defense is built to unleash. And in the middle of that storm, without warning, without rhythm, without a single meaningful rep with the starters, Shedeur Sanders was told to grab his helmet and walk into the fire. There was no easing into the moment, no warm-up throw, no time to breathe. 1 second he was watching from the sideline, and the next he was staring down Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, and a Ravens defense that has embarrassed Super Bowl veterans, let alone rookies. This wasn't a debut, it was a baptism with gasoline. 4 completions, 16 attempts, 47 yards, 1 interception, 2 sacks. Those numbers got plastered everywhere within minutes, as if the stats alone told the story. As if anyone expected a 5th-round rookie, untouched by first-team reps, to suddenly transform into a franchise savior under the brightest and ugliest spotlight imaginable. What people didn't see was the panic in the huddle from guys who barely knew what cadence Shedeur used. What they didn't notice was Jerry Jeudy running routes with zero chemistry, zero timing, zero understanding of how Shedeur throws. What they couldn't feel was the speed of a Ravens defense that instantly recognized they were facing a quarterback who'd been thrown into the deep end without a life jacket. To the outside world, this looked like a rookie melting under pressure. To anyone paying attention, it looked like a setup. Shedeur's footwork was jittery. His reads were late, the timing was off, mistakes every rookie makes. The only difference? Other rookies spend months working through those mistakes with actual game reps. Shedeur's development came in the form of scout team scraps and post-practice leftovers. Still, even in the chaos, there were moments that didn't fit the narrative. The throw down the sideline with a defender in his face. The near touchdown that could have tied the game. The poise on a final drive that had no business being competitive. Those flashes didn't come from luck, they came from raw talent fighting against impossible circumstances. But none of it mattered, because the moment Gabriel went down, the Browns exposed themselves. They revealed just how unprepared their rookie truly was, not because he lacked ability, but because he'd been ignored for 7 straight months. And that's where the real problem begins. Because what happened in Baltimore wasn't the result of one bad day. It was the result of everything the Browns failed to do long before that game ever kicked off. The moment Dillon Gabriel's helmet hit the turf, everything changed. The stadium didn't get quiet, it got louder. Baltimore smelled blood, the kind of moment they live for, the kind of chaos their defense is built to unleash. And in the middle of that storm, without warning, without rhythm, without a single meaningful rep with the starters, Shedeur Sanders was told to grab his helmet and walk into the fire. There was no easing into the moment, no warm-up throw, no time to breathe. 1 second he was watching from the sideline, and the next he was staring down Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, and a Ravens defense that has embarrassed Super Bowl veterans, let alone rookies. This wasn't a debut, it was a baptism with gasoline. 4 completions, 16 attempts, 47 yards, 1 interception, 2 sacks. Those numbers got plastered everywhere within minutes, as if the stats alone told the story. As if anyone expected a 5th-round rookie, untouched by first-team reps, to suddenly transform into a franchise savior under the brightest and ugliest spotlight imaginable. What people didn't see was the panic in the huddle from guys who barely knew what cadence Shedeur used. What they didn't notice was Jerry Jeudy running routes with zero chemistry, zero timing, zero understanding of how Shedeur throws. What they couldn't feel was the speed of a Ravens defense that instantly recognized they were facing a quarterback who'd been thrown into the deep end without a life jacket. To the outside world, this looked like a rookie melting under pressure. To anyone paying attention, it looked like a setup. Shedeur's footwork was jittery, his reads were late, the timing was off, mistakes every rookie makes. The only difference? Other rookies spend months working through those mistakes with actual game reps. Shedeur's development came in the form of scout team scraps and post-practice leftovers. Still, even in the chaos, there were moments that didn't fit the narrative. The throw down the sideline with a defender in his face, the near touchdown that could have tied the game, the poise on a final drive that had no business being competitive. Those flashes didn't come from luck, they came from raw talent fighting against impossible circumstances. But none of it mattered. Because the moment Gabriel went down, the Browns exposed themselves. They revealed just how unprepared their rookie truly was, not because he lacked ability, but because he'd been ignored for 7 straight months. And that's where the real problem begins. Because what happened in Baltimore wasn't the result of one bad day. It was the result of everything the Browns failed to do long before that game ever kicked off. Once you look at Kevin Stefanski's history with young quarterbacks, everything that happened to Shedeur starts to feel less like an accident and more like an inevitability. Cleveland didn't just mishandle one rookie, they followed the same pattern they've been repeating for years, and the results never change. Stefanski has earned a reputation for being organized, detail-oriented, and meticulous with his playbook. But when it comes to developing young quarterbacks, that reputation collapses instantly. Baker Mayfield regressed under him. Every rookie passer who's walked through the doors in his tenure either stagnated or vanished from the league's radar. It's not bad luck, it's philosophy. Stefanski simply doesn't invest in young quarterbacks. He leans on veterans, trusts experience over upside, and keeps development at arm's length. That's why Tony Rizzo's explosion on air hit so hard. His rant wasn't just frustration, it was a summary of something fans have watched quietly for years. The Browns don't know how to build a quarterback, and Stefanski's system practically guarantees it. When your head coach spends games buried in a play sheet instead of coaching, the quarterback who needs hands-on guidance is the one who suffers the most. And Shedeur wasn't just pushed to the background, he was ignored in plain sight. While Dylan Gabriel was being groomed, coached, and granted every opportunity to grow, Shedeur was stuck in quarterback purgatory. No reps with starters, no chemistry with receivers. No chance to fix the very flaws the Browns knew he had when they drafted him. Holding the ball too long? They knew. Slow processing at NFL speed? They knew. Footwork issues from college? They knew. 7 months went by, and none of it was addressed. That's not development. That's neglect. That's been normalized. And Rizzo said what the entire city has been whispering. Stefanski's quarterback resume is empty. For all the organization's talk about long-term planning, not a single young quarterback has improved under this regime. Not one. They've either plateaued or been broken outright. So when Shedeur stepped onto that field cold, overwhelmed by a defense designed to make quarterbacks panic, he wasn't failing Stefanski's system, he was experiencing it exactly as it operates. A rookie getting thrown into a scenario he was never prepared for, coached by someone who hasn't developed a young passer since arriving in Cleveland. The meltdown wasn't a surprise. It was the logical outcome of a philosophy that leaves young quarterbacks behind. But the most damaging part of Stefanski's approach isn't even the lack of development, it's the decision that made this entire disaster unavoidable in the first place. Because what the Browns did next turned a difficult situation into an outright catastrophe. And it started with a move that stunned the entire locker room. If neglecting Shedeur for 7 months was the spark, the Browns' front office decision that followed was the gasoline. It was the moment that turned a quiet developmental failure into a full-blown franchise disaster, a move so short-sighted that even players in the locker room reportedly couldn't believe it happened. It started when Cleveland traded Joe Flacco. On paper, the move looked simple: move a veteran, elevate the rookies, clear space. But behind the scenes, it created a dangerous illusion, the kind of illusion that only becomes clear when everything falls apart. By trading Flacco, the Browns bumped Shedeur from third string to backup. His title changed overnight. His responsibilities changed. His position in the depth chart changed. But the one thing that didn't change? His reps. The Browns elevated him to QB2, but didn't elevate him in practice. They handed him the role without handing him the preparation. No new drills, no starter timing, no expanded play install, nothing that would actually help him perform the job they suddenly placed on his shoulders. It was like giving someone the keys to a car they've never driven and then acting shocked when they crash. Dillon Gabriel kept getting every starter rep, even during weeks when Joe Flacco was the actual QB1. The coaching staff doubled down on Gabriel's development while leaving Shedeur stranded on scout team duty, running plays designed to imitate the opposing offense instead of learning his own. In an NFL organization, this isn't just unusual, it's unheard of. 2 rookie quarterbacks, one getting every chance, the other forgotten in plain sight. And when Gabriel went down, that illusion shattered instantly. Suddenly, the Browns were staring at the consequences of their own decision. The quarterback they had promoted on paper wasn't prepared in reality. The rookie they'd ignored was now the only option. And the franchise that had promised to build for the future realized too late they'd sabotaged it. Because trading Flacco wasn't just a roster decision, it was a strategic miscalculation that exposed every flaw in the Browns' philosophy. A team with 2 developmental quarterbacks cannot afford to only develop one. A team planning for the future cannot bury the future on scout team scraps. A team with a struggling offense cannot pretend quarterback preparation is optional. That one move mangled the entire season. It set the Browns up for the exact disaster that unfolded in Baltimore. And it placed Shedeur Sanders in a position where failure wasn't possible, it was guaranteed. But what happened next is what shocked everyone. Because despite being thrown into a nightmare scenario, despite having 0 chemistry, 0 rhythm, and 0 meaningful reps, Shedeur still showed something the Browns never saw, only because they never bothered to look. And those flashes buried inside a meltdown revealed everything this franchise refused to prepare for. From the outside, it looked like Shedeur Sanders was drowning. The sacks, the hesitation, the misreads, every flaw was magnified under the Ravens' relentless pressure. Social media exploded with takes. Analysts lined up to say, "I told you he wasn't ready," and the highlight reels focused on every mistake. But beneath the surface of that chaotic debut, there was something the headlines didn't capture, something the Browns' coaching staff never helped him develop, yet something that still managed to surface in the worst circumstances imaginable. Because for every shaky throw, every late release, every snap where he held onto the ball too long, there were flashes that didn't belong to a rookie who'd been forgotten for 7 months. There were plays that suggested potential the Browns never tapped into. And that's what made the entire situation so revealing. Take that final drive. The Browns were down, the pressure was suffocating, and Baltimore's defense was playing like they smelled blood. Any young quarterback would have folded. But Shedeur didn't. He locked in, stood tall in a collapsing pocket, and delivered throws with a confidence we hadn't seen all night. Each snap looked faster, each read sharper, each decision more decisive, as if he was finally warming up just in time for the moment everyone had already decided the game was over. Then came the throw. The pass into the end zone, the one that could have tied the game. A perfectly placed ball to Gage Larvadain dropped into the tightest window imaginable against one of the best defenses in football. For a split second, the stadium froze. For a split second, redemption was hanging in the air, and then Kyle Hamilton closed that gap by inches, batting the ball away with a play that would have broken most rookies on the spot. But the crazy part? That throw was right. The timing, the placement, the confidence. It was everything the Browns claimed they were developing behind the scenes, except Shedeur had to produce it in a moment he was never prepared for. Even the Ravens knew it. After sacking him earlier, Hamilton mocked him with the watch celebration, a reminder that the NFL moves fast and rookies get eaten alive. But Shedeur didn't fade. He kept swinging, kept fighting, kept pushing through a situation that wasn't just unfair, it was unwinnable. And that's where the real story hides. Because Shedeur didn't crumble. He adapted. He learned on the fly. He showed something the Browns hadn't seen because they never gave him a real chance to show it. Compare that to other rookies this season. Caleb Williams, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart. They struggled early, but improved because they got the one thing Shedeur didn't. Reps, preparation, time, all the tools necessary to grow. Shedeur had none of that. Yet he still flashed the ability to make big-time throws against a top-tier defense with a season collapsing around him. The meltdown wasn't just a meltdown. It was a glimpse at what he could have been and maybe still could be if he had been coached, prepared, and supported the way every other rookie quarterback is. But the moment he walked to the podium after the game, we learned something even more telling. Because what Shedeur said next didn't just shift the conversation, it exposed the Browns in a way no analyst could have done on his behalf. When Shedeur Sanders stepped up to the podium after the game, nobody knew what to expect. Most rookies in his situation would have deflected blame, pointed to the game plan, the pressure, the moment being too big. Some might have cracked under the weight of a city already calling them a bust after one quarter of football. But Shedeur did the opposite. He didn't hide. He didn't make excuses. He owned every mistake like a veteran who'd been in the league for years. "I don't think I played good," he said quietly, almost too honest for a rookie who'd just been fed to a top-5 defense without warning. He admitted he hesitated, admitted the game felt fast, admitted he wasn't prepared. But then came the line that stunned everyone, fans, analysts, even reporters in the room. He admitted that the throw he made to Jerry Jeudy in the game was the first ball he'd thrown to him all year. Not in training camp, not in OTAs, not during practice. All year. That single sentence exposed the Browns more brutally than any rant on sports radio ever could. It confirmed what the film already hinted at, what Rizzo had been screaming about, what fans suspected but didn't want to believe. The Browns hadn't just failed to prepare Shedeur, they had outright abandoned the basic fundamentals of developing a young quarterback. Jerry Jeudy is supposed to be his top target, his go-to option, his lifeline in stressful moments. And the first ball they ever connected on was thrown in a live NFL game surrounded by chaos and pressure. That revelation cracked the entire narrative wide open. Even Kurt Warner, a Hall of Famer and one of the most respected voices in quarterback development, weighed in during the broadcast. He explained that, yes, backups rarely get heavy practice reps, but the key word was rarely. Those limited reps are for veterans, older players, guys who already know the system and the speed of the league. Shedeur Sanders isn't a veteran. He's a rookie. And not just a rookie who needed every rep he could get. When you have 2 rookie quarterbacks on the depth chart, Warner said the coaching staff has to be creative. They have to find ways to split reps, build timing, and get both players meaningful work. You can't just pick one and pretend the other doesn't exist. Yet that's exactly what Cleveland did. They funneled everything into Dillon Gabriel. They pushed Shedeur into the shadows, and when Gabriel went down, the truth came spilling out. The front office made it worse by trading the only veteran who could have stabilized the room. When they shipped Joe Flacco to Indianapolis, they didn't just lose leadership, they lost the buffer that kept Shedeur from being thrust into this disaster. They elevated him on the depth chart but refused to elevate him in practice. His promotion was nothing more than a paper move. And then, when the team needed him most, he was expected to play like someone they'd never bothered to prepare. Shedeur didn't throw his teammates under the bus. He didn't blame the coaches. He didn't call out the front office. He simply told the truth, a truth that revealed a broken system. A rookie admitting he didn't play well isn't shocking. A rookie admitting he never once practiced with his top receiver? That's organizational malpractice. But the real tragedy is what happens next. Because after this public exposure of Cleveland's dysfunction, the future doesn't just look uncertain. It looks like it's already slipping away from him. And the next chapter of this story is even more brutal because it shows how this disaster might cost Shedeur Sanders more than just one bad game. It might cost him his entire future in Cleveland. As the dust settled from Shedeur's debut, the conversation in Cleveland took a sharp turn. It was no longer about one bad game or a rookie struggling under pressure. It became something bigger, something systemic, a realization that the Browns weren't just failing their young quarterback. They were failing their entire future. And for the first time all season, even longtime voices of optimism in the city began to admit the truth. This coaching staff might not survive the year. Tony Rizzo didn't dance around it. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He went straight for the heart of the issue. He said it plainly he'd be shocked if the owner kept Kevin Stefanski after the season, shocked if the head coach who oversaw this disaster was given another chance. And what comes with a new coach? A new system, a new philosophy, and almost always, a new quarterback. That's where the real danger lies for Shedeur Sanders. Because when a franchise is sitting at 2-8, when the fan base is angry, when the offense is historically bad, and when a rookie quarterback looks overwhelmed after months of negligence, the next coaching staff isn't coming in to fix someone else's project. They're coming in to build their own. They'll draft their guy, mold their guy, invest in their guy. And Shedeur? He becomes an afterthought. Yesterday's news. Another name on a long list of quarterbacks Cleveland cycled through without ever giving them a real chance. Meanwhile, the defense is playing at a level that deserves a contender. Myles Garrett is having a season most players only dream about: 4 sacks against Baltimore. Multiple games where he single-handedly kept the team alive. The defense forced turnovers, controlled the tempo, outplayed the Ravens at every level, and still watched their effort crumble because the offense couldn't score. It's the same tragic script fans have seen for years. A championship-caliber defense dragged down by an offense stuck in neutral. Players feel it. Fans feel it. The locker room feels it. Everyone knows something has to change, and when that moment comes, history says the quarterback becomes the easiest casualty. Not the coach, not the GM, not the play caller. The quarterback. Especially the rookie who the organization didn't bother preparing. The irony is almost painful. The Browns spent months acting like Shedeur wasn't part of the future. Then, when circumstances forced him into action, they judged him as if he had been developed the way every other rookie quarterback in the league is. They blamed his performance without acknowledging the truth. No quarterback in his position would have succeeded. And now, the damage might already be permanent. If Dillon Gabriel clears concussion protocol, he starts against the Raiders. If he doesn't, Shedeur goes back into a fire he still hasn't been coached for. Either way, the Browns' season is spiraling into a place no young quarterback survives. A place where mistakes are magnified, patience disappears, and narratives stick harder than facts. That's why this moment feels bigger than one game or one season. It feels like the crossroads of a career, a point where Cleveland's failure could define Shedeur's future before it ever truly begins. But the most brutal truth? This isn't a new story in Cleveland. This is the story. And everything that comes next reveals exactly why this franchise keeps repeating it quarterback after quarterback, year after year, without ever learning from the wreckage they leave behind. What happened in Baltimore wasn't an isolated disaster. It wasn't a random bad break, and it wasn't the kind of rookie meltdown that fans look back on years later and laugh about. It was a symptom of something deeper, a pattern the Browns have repeated so many times that it's practically a part of the franchise identity. A pattern where promising quarterbacks walk into Cleveland with potential and walk out with question marks that follow them for the rest of their careers. And Shedeur Sanders is now trapped in the middle of that cycle. The film doesn't lie. His footwork was shaky, his internal clock was slow, his eyes didn't adjust to NFL speed. He looked frazzled, overwhelmed, rushed, and lost all at once. But those aren't flaws you fix on game day. Those are corrections you build over months of repetition, coaching, and structure. Reps he never got, coaching he never received, structure the organization failed to give him. And yet the one thing almost no one will talk about is the reality behind those mistakes. He wasn't supposed to be ready. He wasn't coached to be ready. He wasn't trained to be ready, but he was judged as if he was. Look around the league. Caleb Williams opened the season with brutal outings. He missed reads, forced throws, and played like a rookie trying to adjust. But Chicago gave him time, reps, trust, and now he's leading the Bears to wins. Cam Ward took 10 weeks to settle in. Jackson Dart spent years getting reps at Ole Miss before becoming an NFL-ready passer. Every struggling rookie quarterback this year has one thing in common. They were developed. Shedeur? He was thrown into a nightmare scenario with less preparation than a preseason backup. Fans saw the interception, the sacks, the hesitation. But they didn't see the empty practice reps. They didn't see the lack of chemistry. They didn't see the months of lost development time. They didn't see an organization that expected growth without gardening. And that is the Browns' curse. Not bad luck, not bad talent, but a system that refuses to nurture the very players it drafts. The tragedy is that Shedeur showed enough to prove there's something real there, a talent worth molding. A quarterback who could grow into something meaningful if he ever found himself in a situation built for development rather than survival. But Cleveland has never been that place. Not for Baker, not for Deshaun, not for Colt McCoy, not for Brandon Weeden. The names change, the pattern doesn't. And now, Shedeur is staring at the same fate. If the Browns fire Stefanski, and it's becoming harder to imagine they won't, the next head coach won't want to inherit a rookie the organization mishandled. They'll want their own guy, a quarterback they can claim, build, and put their future on. Shedeur becomes expendable before he ever gets a real chance. Maybe that's why this moment feels heavier than a bad debut, because the truth is, the story isn't about a rough game against the Ravens. It's about a franchise that keeps writing the same ending, no matter who plays quarterback. But there's one final piece to this story, the part that ties everything together and exposes the Browns more brutally than anything Shedeur did or didn't do on the field. In the end, Shedeur Sanders' debut didn't reveal who he is as a quarterback. It revealed who the Cleveland Browns are as a franchise. Everything that happened in Baltimore, every sack, every misread, every hesitation, was the inevitable outcome of months of organizational failure disguised as development. A rookie wasn't defeated, a system was exposed. Because Shedeur didn't walk into that stadium unprepared by choice. He walked in unprepared because the Browns made sure of it. 7 months in the building. 0 reps with the starters. No timing with his top receiver. No coaching to fix his known weaknesses. No preparation for NFL speed. No chance to grow, only a chance to fail. And when the moment arrived, the Browns acted shocked. Meanwhile, the defense is playing at a championship level, wasting another season while the offense falls apart under a coaching staff that hasn't developed a young quarterback, not once. A front office that traded the one veteran who could have stabilized the room. A philosophy that prioritizes the starter until the moment the backup is needed and then acts confused when he isn't ready. The pattern never changes. The names do, the results don't. Shedeur's final drive, the near touchdown that could have tied the game, was the clearest glimpse of what he might become if he ever lands in a system that believes in developing talent instead of ignoring it. A moment of poise in a sea of chaos. A spark buried under months of neglect. A reminder that this wasn't a rookie without ability, this was a rookie without preparation. And now, as the Browns spiral toward another losing season, another coaching change, another quarterback reset, Shedeur becomes the latest casualty of a franchise that continues to waste potential year after year. Maybe the next coach won't want him. Maybe the front office will draft someone new. Maybe the fans will move on. But the truth remains. Shedeur Sanders didn't fail in Baltimore. The Browns failed before he ever stepped onto the field. And until this organization learns how to develop the quarterbacks it claims to believe in, this story will repeat again, and again, and again. Same team, some mistakes, different name on the jersey. Because in Cleveland, the problem was never the quarterback, it was the system that never gave him a chance.